Guys, you're welcome to this tutorial. So we recreated the picture on the thumbnail. Now let's analyze it. This is a bustier blouse, and this was after I applied the applique on the structured sleeve. Now this is the back. It has a lacing. I'm going to put a modesty panel later. Now we'll be wearing the skirt on this blouse. So this is it on my client first fitting. When she came, everything was perfect on her. The only difference there is just the fox wrapper and the modesty panel that I've not put. So guys, this is it after attaching the fox wrapper. Now this wrapper is not much, like she doesn't want it plenty, and this is the back part. I've also put the modesty panel. It's all looking fine and beautiful on her. So this tutorial is a whole lot. Kindly watch to the end if this is what interests you. It's the cutting and the sewing video together. Now we decided to put everything in one piece. Let's get started. I'll be using the Natalie Bray pattern, but in inches. That is the shoulder dart pattern. Now the first thing is the shoulder measurement, which is 16 divided by 2. We have 8 inches. After that, I'm going to put the breast point 11, under bust 14.5, waist measurement 17 inches. So I'm also repeating it so I can square up my lines. Then from the waist measurement, I went down by 8 inches, and I also square up the line. So we have all our vertical measurements. Now I went ahead to use 3 inches for the neck width, then 1.5 inch for the shoulder slope. Then for the neck depth, I'm using 3 inches. That is the standard measurement, 3 by 3. Then I connected it to the shoulder slant. Whatever I have left between the shoulder and the neck width, I divided it by 2. That is 5 divided by 2, and I got the midpoint. So guys, for the nipple to nipple measurement, I use 4.25. Then I also mark it all the way from the breast point to the hip. Then I roll the line. Then on the waist measurement, I use 0.75 on both sides for our dart intake. And on the breast point, I came down by 1 inch, and I connect the lines together. And I also went ahead to connect it to the hip length. So from the breast point, guys, I went up by 1 inch, and I also marked the nipple to nipple measurement on that point. Then I rule it to the midpoint of the shoulder, because we'll be using a shoulder dart for this tutorial. Now on the shoulder darts, I mark 1.5 inches on both sides. That is 3 inches. That is the shoulder dart measurement I'm using, and I connected the 2 lines up to that point. Now you're going to fold your darts like this. You are going to close it up so that we can get our shoulder measurement proper. Because if you did not close it up and mark your shoulder will get short. So you take your ruler and you place it from the starting point of the neck width. You're going to rule your shoulder now. Then you also now mark your shoulder measurements on it. So you open it up, we have our shoulder measurement. Now to get our chest line, you have to divide your round sleeve by 2. So for this client, a round sleeve is 14. Divided by 2 is 7. Now that 7 inches is now the chest line. So always make sure you measure your client's round sleeve and across measurement. Those are very important measurements. Now on the chest line, we're going to put the round bust measurement, then plus sewing allowance. Now our round bust is 41 divided by 4, we have 10.25, and I added 2 inches sewing allowance. Now to get the across chest measurement, you see that 7 inches I mark as the chest length. I divided it by 3, and what I have there is 2.3, and I also square up the line. Now on that line, I'm now going to put the across chest measurement. For this client is 15 divided by 2 is 7.5. Then you repeat that dart, what you have there, whatever you have there on your darts, you repeat it. Then you connect the 3 dots together. That now becomes your armhole measurement. So take your armhole curve and just connect the 3 points, then you mark. Now guys, I'm going to be using 1 inch for the shoulder, for the under bust dart. Now from the middle line, I mark 1 inch, then I connected it up to the breast point. Then you take the other side and you're also going to connect it with your curve ruler, just the way you see me doing, like that. I'm trying to get a very good curve for the other parts. So our total dart is now 2 inches. So you connect it to the corresponding dart on the waist length. After doing all of this, you're going to repeat all your bodies, your horizontal measurements. So for the breast point, I put it plus 2 inches sewing allowance. Then for the under bust is 34 divided by 2 by 4, we have 8.5. I repeat the dart of 2 inches, then plus the sewing allowance. So for the waist measurement is 35. I put that, then I repeat the dart measurement, then plus the sewing allowance. Now on the hip length, the client's hip is 44 divided by 4, we have 11. I went ahead to indicate it, then plus sewing allowance of 2 inches. So now I'm going to connect all the points together. Now most people, their under bust and the waist is always the same thing, but for some, the waist always looks smaller. Like I said, if it is the same, that part will be the same thing with the under bust. Now to get the length for this bustier blouse, I mark 3 inches on this seam, then I mark 6 inches from that point and I connect it. Now I'm going to be tightening that part, so I marked 0.25 on both sides and I connected it all the way to the under bust. So guys, since we connected it to the under bust, that means we went ahead to use 1 inch on the waist. So you are going to replace the 0.25 and you connect it to the hip, or you can as well just use 1 inch darts on both waist and the under bust. Now to get the length of where the bustier is starting from, you can either use the chest line, that is 7 inches from the shoulder. So since we use 2 inches for total darts for the under bust, we are going to be using 2 inches also to tighten it. So you are going to mark 1 inch starting from that middle line on both sides. Then you take your curve ruler I are going to connect it to the breast point. After that, guys, you're going to fold one dart onto the other dart so you can get your neck shape proper. So this is me trying to get it so that one will not be longer than the other one. So I just went ahead to indicate it. Or you can just measure from the underbust, follow the curve, whatever you get there, you mark on the other side and you get. So it is the same thing with that point. I am going to connect it into the seam allowance. Can you see the way I place my curve ruler and I mark? So I've gone ahead to mark it, then I'll be closing the dart so I can rule the line again. So I close the waist dart and the hip dart. So you have to close it because when you close, the line gets shorter than each other. So you close and you reshape. Then I went ahead to cut it. After that, guys, we are going to be drafting the back before we come back to the front. Now I'm extending the lines. The lines we need to extend is the hip length, the waist length, the chest line. So it is always good when you draft the front and back on the same paper. So you also extend the chest line. And you see the chest line, the waist length, the hip length, and the across chest measurement. Those are the lines you need to extend. So from the chest line, I went up by 7 inches. That 7 inches is the round sleeve divided by 2, the one we use for the front. I'm trying to point it out for you. Yeah, so from the chest line, you go up by 7 inches. Now from that 7 inches, I'm also going to go up by 1.5 inch. That is also for the shoulder slope we use initially for the front. So you are going to mark your neck width and your neck depth. I use the same 3. Then for the neck depth, I use 1 inch. So guys, you're now going to place your shoulder measurement. Now look at the way I place the tape from the starting of the shoulder to that slant. So you're going to rule your shoulder from the neck width to the shoulder measurement. Now on the across chest measurement, you put the back across chest. Now for this client is 15.5 divided by 2. And on the chest line, you're going to put your round bust measurement. Then I added the 2 inches sewing allowance. So I'll connect the 3 points together. That is excluding the sewing allowance. So we have the armhole for both front and back ready. So for the back darts, I went ahead to use 4.5. I added 0.25. The front is 4.25. Yeah, so I added 0.25. Now to get the length of the darts, I went down by 2 inches from the chest line. Or you can as well just still connect it from the chest line all the way down. So for the darts on the waistline, I use 0.75 on both sides. Now I'm going to connect it to the 2 inches I mark from the chest line. Then I also connect it to the hip length. After that, I went ahead to put the waist measurement divided by 4. I replaced the dart, then plus sewing allowance. On the hip length, I also did that, then I added the sewing allowance. Now I'm going to connect the 3 points together. Guys, you can give me a like at this point. If you've gotten to this point, give me a like if you find this tutorial helpful. So the same thing we did, you're going to mark 3 inches, then I mark 6 inches from the waist to the hip. Just the same thing we did for the front. Now you're going to roll it together. So we have our front and back. So guys, for the lacing at the back, that is why I did not put any zip allowance on this tutorial, because it has lacing. I use 2 inches for the upper part, 2.5 on the waist, then 1 inch on the hip length. Then I went ahead to roll it together. So that is the shape I want for the back. Now I'm trying to separate the two patterns now. After that, I also went ahead to close the darts. You can either close it on one side or the other side, it depends on you. So when you close, I'm just trying to roll all the lines so I won't have any shortage. Now I'm going to cut it off. And I'm also cutting out the shape. So this is our back bodice. So if you want the neck depth, you can either go down from the chest line and you connect it to the armhole, or you can use the chest line, like let it be straight. So I'm writing what I have there so that I will just know that that is what I have for my lacing. So to tighten the chest line for the back, I mark 0.25 on both sides, and I also connected it to their corresponding darts. Now I'm going to be removing it. So you do not need to tighten the hip part for this back because it has a lacing. Now you have to indicate the part that is going up and the part that is going down, so that you will know your patterns properly. So we have our back ready. Then I went ahead to just reduce the measurement. So I used 0.75 for the hip length there. On the waist, the 2.5 for me is too much. I used 2 inches. Then for the upper part, I used 1.5 inches. So it depends on what you want, how open you want, your back to be. Then I just connect all the lines together. Then I'll cut it off. So this is me just still trying to write it down. So this is it for the back. And if you want to put a yoke, that is the yoke. But for this tutorial, it's a cheap bustier. Now for the front, I'm going to be cutting it now. So I'm cutting our shape. Then for the other darts, you can see the way I'm cutting. So that is how you cut. Now if you want to do a straight, if If you want the chest line to be straight, you leave it like that, it is okay. But if you want to have a sweetheart neckline, from the neck depth I went down by 6 inches. It depends on how deep you want your neckline to be though. Then you connect it to your dart. So I'm going to be cutting now. I'm cutting the neck shape into the other side, then the shape. So we're done cutting the front. Now for the yoke, they're going to fold from one dart to the other dart, and you're going to cut it. That is if you are using a yoke for this tutorial. So you cut the neckline, then you close your darts and you cut the armhole. So we are done with the front and the back bodice. So guys, our next tutorial will be the sewing part. Thank you all. Bye. After cutting the patterns on the fashion fabric and lining, this is what we have. So now I'm going to be removing the pattern paper and let's continue with the fashion fabric. Now we have both lining and lace, and I gummed the lace and I also gummed the lining with interfacing. So this is a lining center front. I cut 4 piece and I gum it from the underbust to the chest line. I did not do that on the actual fabric. Then on the cup side of the lining, I also cut out the shape and I also gum it. That's 4 piece each. On the fashion fabric, I did not do that. I just, whatever padding we are doing had to be on the lining. Now you place the lining, the cup side on the center front. You're going to be sewing with 1/2 inch. You place the second bustier side and you sew with 1/2 inch. So I'll be dropping that, and you do that also with the fashion fabric. You place them on each other, you sew with 1/2 inch. You place the other side and you sew with 1/2 inch. Now for the back part, you are also going to be attaching one piece to the other piece and you sew. Now this is the lining. You are going to take the second piece because the back have 2 pieces. So you take the second piece, make sure you place them properly, like the upper part to the upper part of the other lining, and you do that, and you're going to sew with 1/2 inch because I added 1/2 inch sewing allowance all round except the seam side where we already have the sewing allowance on the pattern paper. So for the fashion fabric, you're going to place the other piece on each other and you are going to sew just like how I mentioned for the lining. Now guys, after sewing, and I've also ironed it, this is what we have. So I did that for everything. For the front part, this is how it is, and when you open it up, the lining, the padded part is going to be like this. And I just use a piece of paper gum to just seal the seam allowance and I ironed it. You can see our shape is out already. Now for the lace part, this is it. I also cut out a piece of paper gum and I just conceal that seam, and we ironed it. So all of us know how to do this part. So now we're going to be putting boning on the lining because it's a lace and I don't want to have any sewing on the lace. So for the lining, I'm going to be marking the first star line, that is the center front. The second one will be on the dart, Then after that, I'm going to be putting another star line, just the way you see me place my ruler. So from I'm going to be marking 2.5 inches. That is the spacing which I want, and I'm just going to be rolling it up in an asymmetric form. I'll do that for the second side. I also marked 2.5 inches, and I'm also rolling. So we have 1 2 3 4 5 star lines for the center front. Now for the back parts, guys, the first star line will be on the dart. Then the second star line, I marked 2 inches from the first star line, and I also mark another 2 inches from the second star line, and I went ahead to roll all the lines. So we're going to be having 3 boning on the back for now. So the same thing I did for the first back, I'm repeating it on the second back. Okay guys, now that we have our star lines, this is I'm using a regional boning for this tutorial. So I'm going to be cutting. Now from the upper parts, I went down by 0.75, the lower part 0.75. That is where our boning will start and end. So I cut out all the boning for all the star lines. After cutting the back, I'm going to be cutting the front boning as well. So I did the same thing, 0.75 on the down parts, 0.75 on the upper parts, and I cut. Now I've gone ahead to iron, and I sew on it. You have to iron your regional boning first before you sew, so it will be very neat. Now after sewing on all the star lines, this is what it is giving us. You can see it is very neat and beautiful. So guys, for the lining part at the back, we are going to be turning it with the fashion fabric. Now I'm going to say something. You realize the lining on this part where you see me touching, it has lots and lots and lots of paper gum, yeah, and the fashion fabric as well, because I want it to be very thick when we insert our eyelets. So we're going to be turning it 1/2 inch, and you're going to turn this other side with 1/2 inch. So for the front parts, you're going to place the lining on each other. You're going to sew all the way to the other side, and you sew the sides also. So let's go and sew. After sewing, guys, this is how it is. I've turned and I top stitch the upper part, and I also turn. Now we're going to, this is the front part. I'm just trying to show you what I did. Now we're going to be sewing regional boning on that part where you see me touching, yeah, because we want it to have structure. When we fix our eyelet, that part will be very strong. So you're going to fix your regional boning on it. You're going to sew on the seam, and you stop 0.75 before the hemline. So after that, okay guys, this is it. After sewing on it, I'm just cutting off that pointy part, so when I turn it, that place will not be too bulky. Then I went ahead to turn the back part. Can you see it? Yeah. and I did that for the second back. So guys, I've ironed this and everything is all looking smooth and flat. Can you see it? So the next thing we're going to do is to put our seam allowance. Now when I drafted this pattern, I added 1.5 inches seam allowance and I turned with 0.25 inward, like the lining turning into the actual fabric. So what we have left is 1.25. That is what I put, and I also put it on the back part, 1.25 all the way down. So that is what we'll be sewing the seam with. Now you're just going to run a stitch on the down part just to secure both lining and actual fabric together. You do the same thing for the front part. So let's go and sew our side seam. So mates, after sewing, this is it. Yeah, we are almost getting ready. The top is, is almost ready. Now you are going to cut a bias stripe. I use the bridal satin to cut a stripe just in a bias form. Yeah, and you're going to place it on it, fold the edge part to match with the fold of your seam, and you're going to sew it just the way you turn your fabric with bias. That is how you're going to do that. Now I've gone ahead to do that. It is all looking beautiful. Then I fix my eyelet. You can take yours to the market if you don't have the eyelet machine. And this is our rope for the lacing. So I'm just going to be lacing it up for you guys to see. Now this is a blouse, a bustier blouse, whereby you are going to wear the skirts on top. I know most of you might have seen those type of designs online, like Prudential, Vicky James, and all of that, whereby they wear, their bustier is, their top is inside and the skirt part is on it. So this is what we are sewing. So for the structured sleeve, guys, I cut out this piece. I cut 4 of it and 10.5 width, then 30 something length. Now it depends on where you want it to get to, or your client's body. You have to measure from the start to the back. Now I cut 4 pieces for this, yeah, and I gum 2 with medium gum stay, the T gum stay, then I gum 2 with S stay. So I have my Regina boning. I have 6 because we'll be putting 3 on each. So just watch how we're going to fix it. So guys, from the starting point, I went ahead to mark 0.25 all the way down on the satin that has the medium gum stay, that's the harder gum stay. So guys, in order to put our boning inside, I just want to get the width of the boning. I think it's 1/2 inch, so I mark 1/2 inch after the 0.25 and I rule. I did that for the second side. The same thing I did for this front side. I did it. So 0.25 first before the 1/2 inch, and I went ahead to rule, and I also do that at the middle of the fabric. After that, guys, I went ahead to sew on all the lines. So you're going to take the satin, the one you gum with stay, you're going to place the one you gum with medium gum stay on it, and you sew on that first 0.2 line. Yeah, you sew on the first 0.2 line, then you turn it. You're not going to sew on the middle one, just the 2 edges. So after sewing, guys, this is what we have. Now we're going to be turning it outside, from the inside to the outside. and this is it. So the part that have the sewing is going to be the inside, that is the lining of this tutorial. So you take your Regini Boni and you insert inside it. So you're going to insert on that part you sew. So because you already gum it with medium gum stay, it already give you a pocket for it. So after that, this is how it is. Now this is how you're going to place it. You're going to fold it that way and you stitch it. You do that for the second side and you're going to stitch, so it becomes something like this. Then you take your bustier blouse and you're going to look at the picture in which you are following. So wherever they place it, that is where you place it. So this one was placed on the second dart, so you place it that way and you're going to turn. You're going to place it at the back side, but you have to do this on your client's body, and the second one you place it like a crisscross.